Do two $900 surveys equals one good $1,800 survey? That's the question I'm going to answer in this video. I'm going to tell you a little story. This is a true story. This happened to me a few weeks ago. I got a call from a homeowner. He owned a custom home up in an area known as Lake Tulloch. It's up in the Sierra Nevada foothills, just south of Copperopolis. So he owned a custom home on a waterfront lot. And the reason he was calling me is he wanted to put an addition on the house. And so he had paid $900 to get a boundary survey from a local surveyor that runs around up there in that part of the woods. And got the survey. His neighbor started asking some questions, wanted to know what the surveyors were doing. They got to looking at the survey, and the next door neighbor didn't like the results of the survey, so he went out and hired a different surveyor that runs up around in those parts of the woods, and he paid $900 for a boundary survey of his lot. And so the reason the main landowner, the first landowner, was calling me was when the neighbor got his $900 survey, lo and behold, the two surveys put the common boundary line, they overlapped the common boundary line by about 2 or 3 feet. So there was a disagreement of between 2 and 3 feet over where this parcel boundary was between the two parcels. And so the gentleman called me and he said, hey, I've got this problem. I've got these two surveys now that don't agree, my survey and my neighbor's survey. I heard that you did good work. I wanted to know if you could come up and take a look at these two surveys and, do your own survey and figure out who's right and who's wrong. I really need to know where this property line is. It's going to, dictate what kind of addition I can put on that side of the house. And he said, I'm also a little bit worried. I've got a boat dock down on the lake now, and now my neighbor thinks that my boat dock is over the property line, and says it's causing a big mess. So I told him that I could certainly do that. I started asking him some questions. I took a look at his land records. And this isn't a super gnarly place to survey, but it's not what I would call an easy place to survey either. A lot of this stuff is fairly old. And I talked to another surveyor that actually worked for me that had done some work up in that area when it was originally some of it was being subdivided. And he said, yeah, I'm not surprised that they're finding problems of a couple, 2-3 feet up there. So I explained to the landowner what I needed to do to go out and try and get this sorted out, figure out where this property line really was. And so I told him how much it was, roughly what it was going to cost. I said it's going to be somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000 probably to figure out what you're dealing with. And he was shocked at that price. He said, well, my first survey was only $900. He said, and the neighbor's survey was only $900. He said, but I'd be willing to pay as much as $1,800 to get the job done right. So, and I don't think this guy was, I don't think he was trying to be disrespectful or stingy. He didn't understand, right? He didn't understand. And most people don't. They don't understand what it takes to do a good boundary survey. So I told him, I said, look, part of the reason you and your neighbor are in the situation that you're in right now is because you've gone out and paid a fraction of the cost that it would take to do the job right. I said, so no, I can't survey your waterfront lot for $1,800 and get this sorted out. I said, if you want it sorted out, it's going to be, somewhere between 5 to 10 times that amount. And, he got upset and, he got off the phone with me and he never called back. So I don't know how these two guys ended up sorting out their mess, but the reason I wanted to tell that story was it's just such a great example of what's wrong with a lot of the boundary surveys that get done here in California. Here's two guys, two different surveyors. They both run out to this area, do a $900 survey, and put the property line, 2 or 3 feet in conflict with the neighbor. And then you know what those guys do? They disappear, right? They disappear. They leave their client with that $900 survey, which didn't get recorded at the county. I know it didn't. And they leave them with that problem, with no ideas about what to do next, right? Now, you might say, well, you can't blame the surveyors because the landowners were cheap and they got what they paid for. And that's true. But, land surveyors are licensed professionals and they have a professional responsibility not to do that kind of stuff, right? So I blame both. I blame the landowners for being cheap. And I blame both the surveyors for not delivering the real value and not doing a thorough, proper job of a boundary survey like they were supposed to. So, what are the lessons from this story, right? Sometimes I tell you guys these stories in these videos, and it's like, you couldn't make this stuff up, right? I couldn't make this stuff up if I tried, right? These are phone calls that I really get. So, what do we learn from this phone call? This guy that, paid $900 for his boundary survey and wanted to fix it with an $1,800 boundary survey. So here's what you learn. Number one, 2 cheap surveys don't equal 1 good survey. So you can't take 2 cheap surveys and double that price, take cheap survey 1, cheap survey 2, add them together and say, oh, well, that must be what a good survey costs, right? Because that's what this guy was trying to do. He thought he was being generous. He said, well, I paid $900 for the first one. I'll double that. I'll pay $1,800, right? And it's just that mentality just reflects a complete lack of understanding on what it takes to really do a good job on a boundary survey. Second lesson is, you get what you pay for. You're going to go pay $900 for a boundary survey from somebody that's a construction surveyor that's pretending to be a boundary surveyor, and then that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a $900 survey, right? And what's a $900 survey worth? It's not even worth $900. And that's something that this guy was finding out the hard way. So, the other lesson, and I've talked about this a lot, is you want to hire a good land surveyor that's going to help you solve potential problems that come up. And we don't find problems on every survey, but we find problems on a lot of surveys. And a lot of surveyors will find that problem and walk away from the client. And that's not what a good land surveyor does. Now, I don't expect land surveyors to work for free to solve those problems, but a good land surveyor is going to sit down with their client and say, here's the problem I found. Here's why this type of problem happens. Here's what we can do to fix it. Here's what we can do to make sure it doesn't happen again in the future. Those are conversations that a good land surveyor, she's going to have those conversations with her client when something like that comes up. So those are some lessons. So to kind of sum up, do 2 $900 boundary surveys equal 1 $1,800 boundary survey? Nope, they don't. And even if you went out, this guy went out and got himself an $1,800 boundary survey, he probably wouldn't be much better off than he was with the 900, right? It was going to cost significantly more money than that to figure out what was going on with these 2 lots and the fence and the dock and the building addition and get it all sorted out. And, just out of curiosity, this guy's living in a $2.5 million house on the water. Right in the foothills of Central California. You can't help people like that, right? The guy wants to be cheap. He's going to cost himself more money in the long run.